October 18th, 2001, Michael Spitz, or maybe it was Stip, tells police that he and Danny Lewis killed and buried Don Lewis. Detective Jorge Fernandez called me this morning and said that he had a new lead in Don's disappearance. He asked if the name Michael Spitz meant anything to me, and it didn't. He said that the guy claimed to work for Don and that he was short, chubby, and alcoholic. I asked if he was balding, and he said no, that he had a full head of hair. Dad said it sounded like a guy that sometimes worked at Wildlife on Easy Street, who Dad called the Samoan because of his Polynesian looks. Michael Spitz claimed that he was working out at the Highway 92 farm in Seffner on the front end loader on the Saturday before Don disappeared and heard 2 gunshots. When he went to investigate, he saw Don's son, Danny Lewis, standing about 15 feet away with a gun in his hand. Don was dead on the ground with 2 bullet holes in his head. Danny threatened Michael and his family if he were ever to tell. They loaded Don in the bucket of the loader and covered him with palm leaves. They buried him in a pit that was 60 feet by 200 feet and maybe 30 feet deep under concrete that they were filling the hole with. Michael says he is dying of AIDS and only has a couple of months left to live and wanted to come clean before he dies. George asked me if they could go dig around, and I told him that I had sold the property, but that I would try to locate the new owners for him. I pulled it up on the computer and faxed it in with this note. Danny Lewis must be in his mid-30s. I can't find anything that had any more than just the name Danny Lewis. He should have had a pretty extensive rap sheet. Last time I saw him, he was 6 feet tall, blonde hair, bald on top. Don said that he was adopted, but he looked so much like Don that I always suspected he was an illegitimate son that had been unwittingly adopted by Gladys Lewis Cross. Gladys Lewis Cross was last known to me as Gladys Lewis Cross at 1603 Lakewood Drive, Brandon, Florida 33510. She was always very protective of Danny, so I don't know if she would help. And for those of you watching, she doesn't live there anymore, so don't bother the people that live there. Seems like Danny was in prison or rehab at the time that Don disappeared, because when his sisters and the secretary all came in and tried to take over our business, Danny wasn't available to sign for himself, so Gladys Lewis Cross was representing him and using her address for his mail. I found this booking that was dated June the 14th of 2020 for Danny, and put it in here later, obviously. These dates may help you fill in some of the pieces. Don fired Danny March 30th, 1994, but Don fired Danny a lot, so I'm not sure that was the last time. Don told me that his insurance policy draft in April of 1997 eliminated Danny and Don's daughter, Linda Sanchez, as beneficiaries. The person I couldn't think of was Alvin Coulter, and I remembered that he and Joe Ryan were the first people to call me asking about Don after he disappeared. When Don was robbed and beaten by the masked intruder in the late 1980s, he said that it was either Danny or Alvin Coulter, and that either way they were in on it together. Joe Ryan is the person who originally built the house that you said is falling down at the old farm on Highway 92. Joe borrowed money to finish the home, didn't make his payments, and we foreclosed on him, taking the property and his home. Don and Joe were involved in the litigation with Lazy Days at the time of his disappearance. I asked my dad if he remembered Michael Spitz, and the closest he came to the description was someone that he called the Samoan due to his Polynesian looks. I don't know if this could have been the same person. You said that Michael Spitz is dying, and that is why he has come clean, but you also said that he feared for his family's lives, so I'm wondering why that doesn't matter now. As for the property, I sold it in August of 1999 to the Promised Land Fund, who sold it in November of 1999 to David R. and James M. Chadwell. Following is the court record. I don't have any contact info for the current owners. I know there was a shallow pit that was excavated and filled with concrete just northeast of the house, but that pit was only about 60 feet round. I never saw how deep. Don had buried a lot of stuff that he was being made to dig out by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. Don talked about a much bigger pit, more to the east of the house, closer to the water, that was the main source of the EPA complaint. Perhaps the EPA has a site map. I don't have anything in my file that shows it. I do remember Don complaining about what the cleanup was costing, so I think it was a large amount of stuff being removed. The dates Michael Spitz gave you were obviously wrong, and I'm wondering if it happened later, how it was that Michael was still out there working. Who was paying him? The only person I remember living on that property at the time was Kenny Farr and Trish Farr. No one came to me asking to be paid or asking if they should keep working out there. Please let me know if you discover any credible evidence. And then I faxed the above to Jorge Fernandez at 247-0537, and then it says regular phone 247-8663, and it's dated 10/18 of 2001, which is the same date as this entry. And then under that it says Jamie and Daniel Capiro left on the 17th for Australia. I asked Alan Schreier if he would be more comfortable if I stay at their house until the 24th when they get back, and he said yes. He was moving to 804 Lakewood by the first week of November. And then this is dated May the 20th of 2020. And it says Christopher Spada tells, and he's the reporter for the Tampa Tribune. Christopher Spada tells me that Mike Spitz was actually Mike Stip. The photos above came from Spada too. On June the 13th of 2020, Ripper Jack interviews Kenny Farr's ex-wife Trish, who says this guy is Mexican Mike Garcia, I think. I'd have to listen again. And claims that he and Kenny had brought Don's van full of guns to her marital home the day before Don disappeared. She makes a lot of false claims, but Denny did often drive our vehicles and could have been getting the guns ready for the barge trip to Costa Rica. I think there was some news of this Mexican Mike being a contract killer. The police later told me his story couldn't be true because Danny Lewis was locked up at the time.